Welcome back to another edition of the Three Stooges podcast. We took some summertime off. It's good to be back. We got hot weather outside. We got football scrimmages everywhere. We are all over the Sac-Joaquin section of the California Interscholastic Federation. Also, we'll talk on Bay Area football and statewide high school football. We're big on what's going on in these regions. I'm Joe Davidson. I've been with the Sacramento Bee since 1989, pre-internet. It's still a great gig. We've seen all the rise of the new schools over the decades. We've never had better football, small school, large school, medium size, all throughout the Sac-Joaquin section. It's a joy doing this. Why don't you guys introduce yourself real quick? Where you're from? I'm from the Oregon Mountains. I played small school, high school football. So that's where my roots are, is from out of state, but Sacramento and this region is home for me.
Yeah, I am Chris with West Coast Preps. Been there since 2020, since those crazy COVID days. I can tell you I'm in Sacramento now, have been since 2023. And like Joe said, I don't think it's ever been better. I started out in the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in Livermore. I grew up in the East Bay Athletic League. I saw all those great programs, great teams. And I can say now that the Sacramento area stacks up with the Bay Area in terms of football, in terms of heck, all sports, and maybe some sports. Sacramento has the edge. But yeah, I've been out here for a couple of years, and heck, I can't freaking wait for football season to start on what is it, August 22nd. Then we got that ESPN game on the 23rd.
Yep, and it's going to be a great season. I'm Jordan with Gold Country Media, Jordan Georgeson, and I've been with Gold Country for I think this is my fifth season now coming in. I got hired right before summer of 2021. I've grown up out here. I went to Del Oro High School, lived in Loomis, played football there, so kind of that mix of small town feel, but big school football because back then I think it was still 2,000 students or something like that. Loved covering this area, and I'm with you guys. I think this is the best it's ever been. We're seeing big schools succeed, small schools succeed. Feels like we're getting close games more and more. The gaps between the powerhouses out here and the other programs are closing. And then the biggest one that I love, and I'm sure we'll touch on it, eight-man football. We always talk about the haves and the have-nots. And if you look at eight-man football, it's all new programs and a lot of programs that haven't had success. And someone's going to become a big-time program for probably the first time in their school's history there. So I love where we're at sports-wise, and I think this is going to be one of the best seasons we've had.
That's just great. I ran into Ron Nichetti, the executive director for the CIF, the governing body of high school sports, yesterday at a function, and he's ecstatic that this section, there's 10 sections in California, and they all govern themselves individually for those seasons. And so we have the second largest of the 10 sections, and we have a problem with football participation numbers, not for the powerhouse programs, not even for the good competitive teams that are that compete every year, but for the smaller schools, they've really struggled, and that's San Juan Unified Schools, San Juan, Mira Loma, Encina, up in Placer County, Forest Hill, Valley Christian Academy of Roseville, all going to eight-man football. Football's traditionally 11-man, but you go down to eight-man, which is what we have all the way up to the Oregon border for a lot of small towns up there. It allows you to hold on to football. Is it only for small enrollment schools like Delta Saints on the Sacramento River? No. Elk Grove Unified has two schools that folded football at about this time last year. The Valley Vikings of Sacramento, and then also the Florin Panthers. Florin opened in '89, Valley opened in 1977. They've had some decent football numbers over the years, but they had to fold their program last year. They're going eight-man. And like Jordan touched on, this saves these programs. We'll dig into those later. Anyways, Ron Nichetti of the CIF governing body said that there's so much interest in that if they get more teams to do eight-man football in the coming years, they will be NorCal and state playoff for eight-man football. For this section, under Mike Garrison and Jason Furbach, who were the trailblazers in getting these eight-man teams going this fall, we will have section championships. So kudos to the section. Kudos to those kids having a chance to continue to play. Oh, can you get scholarships? Well, you're not supposed to be playing football just to get scholarships. Most people don't get scholarships. But to answer that question, yes, Rashawn Salam won a Heisman Trophy years ago with the Colorado Buffaloes, and he was at an eight-man team in La Jolla down in San Diego County. So all kinds of possibilities there. Our best teams are going to be playing in the Saturday showcase, August 23rd, that Chris Jackson alluded to, ESPN game with the four-time defending section champion Division One Folsom Bulldogs taking on a three-time defending section champion, NorCal champion as well, in the Grant Pacers. Fantastic game. Should be really good. Great line play for both teams. Skilled players galore. Ryder Line's five-star recruit for Folsom, and Zoe Edwards and Kobe Shabazz, the great receivers for Grant. So this will not be boring. I saw Grant practice. They looked the part. I've seen Folsom in a scrimmage. They looked the part. Saw Oak Ridge could be the third best team in this area or in the section. They also looked pretty good. But wow, there we go. Jordan, back to you. You were in Loomis. You know the directions. You know how to get there to your old school. And Loomis is big on Del Oro football. The Golden Eagles 2-8 last year. Uncharacteristic. Josh Perry, a fiery, fierce coach, got a beard that's better than George's. I didn't think that was possible. But you just wrote in Gold Country Media, they have two-star tight ends, and that's throwback physical football. And these guys are skilled and big. Size those guys up. How did they look the other day, the other night? And do they see themselves getting back off the turf? I'm sure they do.
They certainly believe this is a group that can bring back what Del Oro football is known for. I mean, when Del Oro goes 2-8 in football, I think people in Loomis are, in a way, kind of thinking the sky's falling because they're used to winning NorCal and state titles there, and it wasn't long ago that they were doing that. Rough year last year, but you know what? From what I saw Friday night at their black and gold scrimmage, I don't think they'll be down for long. And even if this year is going to be an interesting year because there's a lot of talent on that team, there's also kind of the cloud looming over your head of the season to go. So it's going to kind of be what shows up. With that, they've got a tough non-league schedule. Downey's not going to be a cakewalk. Placer's not going to be a cakewalk. Foothill up in Palo Cedro is not going to be a cakewalk. And then another non-league game against Davis, which was an SFL game. And then obviously you have the SFL slate. So not an easy schedule for them, but if there are two guys that are going to help this team a lot, it's going to be this tight end group. Luke Gaylor is a Washington State commit. Didn't have a great season in terms of production last year, but I mean, when he was on the field, he was a weapon. I think a lot of the reason his production wasn't the best was because he's seeing a lot of double teams, and he was really kind of the focal point of other defenses. And he looks apart, 6'6", 230 pounds, and he puts his shoulder down. He's athletic as they come. You can line him up as a receiver. You can line him up as a tight end. He's playing a little bit of defensive end too. He's going to be a problem, and he's going to be tough for teams to cover. And then it's also going to be tough to cover Landon Perry, 6'2", 240. He had about a 70-yard touchdown reception where he was fending off the defender with one hand, and he makes a one-handed snag, just palms it in the air at the 30-yard line, just pushes the defender off and just trots in untouched for the rest of the way for a touchdown. And I mean, I don't think I've seen a kid his size move the way he does, but it makes sense. I mean, his dad played in the NFL, caught a pass in a Super Bowl. If you look at him, I mean, this kid looks like he's eating like elk legs or something for dinner. I mean, he's benching over 350, I've heard, squatting over 500, and he's only a junior. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be a scary duo. I don't know how you're going to guard it. And then the big thing is Nolan Savay, the quarterback. He had kind of a rough year last year. He's been working with Paul Doherty's quarterback camp that he has, where he brings in a lot of these local quarterbacks. And you watch him play, and he was a little shaky to start the scrimmage, but that second half of the scrimmage, he was making a few throws where I'm like, you know what? I kind of went in with some questions of what Del Oro is going to look like, but I left that thinking that there's a possibility that this team gets back to the playoffs. And, no matter what you kind of think of if they make it this year or not, you could tell they're not going to be down for long. They have a great junior class coming in. And I mean, Chris, Joe, you guys know when we're at these games, we're not writing about the JV games, but we're not oblivious to the JV game going on. And we watch it a little bit. And every time I saw Del Oro last year, I really liked what this JV program has coming up. So I think it's a good junior class coming in. And I think that Del Oro is a team that it reminds me a lot of what Lincoln was last year. Lincoln had that 1-9 season the year before, and I went out to their practice and I was like, this is not what I expected to see, and kind of thought, maybe this team can be a little better than people thought. And that team ended up going 7-3 and made the playoffs. So I'm not saying, book 7 wins on Dio's schedule, but I also would not be surprised to see this team be fighting for a playoff spot and maybe not be kind of the punching bag of the SFL like they were last year.
Well, it's really interesting because in Placer County, football is king. We've touched on that. Whether it's at the Placer Hillman or the Rockland Thunder or the Granite Bay Grizzlies, it's been such a big deal, or Colfax Falcons, and uh, the fans were all over the coaches last year on social media posts. And you got to know Josh Perry the last few years, Jordan, and very passionate man, and gets emotional and. He comes across as this firebrand Mike Ditka type, but he's got empathy and warmth to him. He knows that football is rooted in love and passion. So he's having a time of his life coaching his son. But to see that community support the other night, they haven't given up. The rooting section hasn't given up. And there is pressure out there. And they invite it. They've won section championships, a whole, nine of them or 10 of them since the late 80s, since 1989. And they're going to bring you shared this the other day. We were texting the three of us, Jordan, but Jeff Walters and Steve Birch, longtime former coaches with the football program, or back involved with the football program. I think that's a huge boost. Steve Birch was the defensive coordinator for some of those great Casey Taylor led teams that went to state finals, several state finals. I think four or five of them they went to. And Jeff Walters was the coach who replaced Casey Taylor. He's an alum of the school. He got his coaching start there, led him to their last section championship in 2018 or 19 or so, around there. So kudos to the Golden Eagles. Hey, get some guys, dust them off, bring them out there. That helps. And Chris Jackson, where have you gone of late? And anybody standing out? A player, small school, medium school? Share with us what you've seen.
So I'll highlight some of the small schools I've just checked out. We actually have Sean Holko on staff now too, and he was just at some of the small schools, the TVL powers, right? He's seen Houston, Escalon. He was at Sonora. He's seen Oakdale. Bunch of great teams down there. I was at Sutter. I was at Wheatland last week. Wheatland looks like just this fast rising program. A couple of years ago, when they scored 49 total points in 10 games. The year after, 3 wins, no wins in league play. A couple one score losses, overtime loss in there that was at against center from Antelope. They turned the tides last year. Isaac Martin, Conley Kova, all those guys win 9 games, a 9-1 regular season PVL champs, and that'd be crazy to say, but Wheatland might be even better this year. Conley Kova's back, an MVP, over 700 rushing yards, over 20 tackles for loss. He's got 6 college offers. Dylan Wilkins, a 6'3", 230, 240 defensive end, blocker, everything in between. They've got size, they've got depth, they've got strength. They've got a couple of quarterbacks they really like. They've got a Del Oro transfer, Cody Atwood, who they're confident will be eligible right away. They're still waiting on the Marysville transfer rulings. They've had appeals there. They were denied, the Marysville kids that came in, but they're confident those appeals will come in. If those appeals don't win, sit out period, they come in late September, early October. So they are confident either way what they've got to make a run. Sutter, just small school football at its finest. I also checked out their Meet the Huskies night Friday. 1,500 people were at Sutter's football stadium to meet the team. They introduce every kid, introduce all the coaches, cheerleaders, everything in between. And you can see why that community rallies around that program, because they've got a 4-star in Troy Bowens, that defensive end, 6'4", 6'5", 250. They have another defensive end who is about 6'4", 240, Gavin Lavoie. I don't know how you block those two on the edge. Justice White's a linebacker that's hit a 4.55 40. They got Auckland Asiata's younger brother, is a great running back who was squatting, I think, 500 pounds. Quarterback Braden Scritchfield didn't throw an interception last year. He can run. Sutter's got a chance. They were this close. We all remember that D5 section final where Houston went for 2 and beat them for that three-peat. You got to think Sutter's going to make a run back. And today I'm going to Folsom, check that practice out. I can't wait to see the way Ryder Lyons looks. Jamison Powell, I charted it, did a story up today on the website where Folsom's got the second most players with Division I offers in their program. 18 kids with Division I offers. The only one that has more in NorCal is Archbishop Reardon, has 20 kids with Division I offers, which is absolutely insane to think. But I'll be at Folsom. I've also checked out Casa Roble. Yes, they lost some top guys, right? Elijah Huddle is at Sacramento State. Darren Dalton is now playing JUCO football. But Aiden Lopez is back, the quarterback. Kids want to play with him. And I think Casa's got about 52 kids on its varsity program. And there's no doubt in their minds that they are better than last year and that they can compete for a section title. They might be deeper than they were in 2023. With Aiden Lopez is back. Xander Freitag is a great running back, linebacker. They've got 2-3 running backs they like. Another big offensive line. a defense that's good, and wide receiver room. They got Folsom transfers. Felix Rodriguez looks like an absolute dude on the outside. Eric Eaton, Cullen Peabody, Cos Robles fast, big, strong, physical. And Chris Horner's got that energy. And you know when Horner's got that energy about him, that confidence, and the staff does that, something special could happen. They open up with Placer, where I was with Jordan, right? Gage, Esty, Sean Jones, another great backfield. Laguna Creek looks really good. That's a team to not overlook in the Delta League. A couple of 4-year guys are back. Ryan Eddy, Brandon Davis. You've got Jarek Owen, put on 30 pounds. He was an all Sacramento linebacker last year. Now, added 30 pounds, he might be even faster, too. And then Union Mine graduated a great senior class, but their culture's there, their weight room culture's there. And they won their first playoff game since 2010, 2 years ago. Last year went to the semifinals. And if you like great run games, a great offensive line, Union Mine's your program. Brandon Pacheco, the head coach, Taylor Duncan is an offensive line guru. They are going to run the ball down your throat, and heck, good luck stopping them. I think they ran for 500 yards in one of their playoff games. But those are all the stops so far. I know that's a lot, but these are a lot of programs that they're coming. And one of those that I really like, I think, is making a return to maybe playing at Sac City. I think is Casa Roble can really make a run again.
Yeah. Talk about Chris Horner. He's a product of the San Juan Unified. He was a Sacramento Bee All Metro lineman in the early 90s. So when Casaroboli won that section championship a couple of years ago in last minute play, and his son catches the game-winning conversion. Just excitement. And the thing that he said after that game is he was excited for all the Orangevalians, the people of Orangevale, and he makes football so fun there. It's an atmosphere, it's a fun event, and that's a terrific opener against Placer. A year ago, Placer won that game, but both teams are just stacked. And as you can tell, as we talk to the audience here, we cover the large schools, the small schools, teams that play on grass. The Sutter Huskies used to be of the northern section, which stretches all the way to the Oregon border. They've been a terrific addition to the Sac-Joaquin section. Same with Wheatland, was in the northern section for years. Joined this section, boy, they just fit just perfectly. And they've boosted this section small school out because the southern part of the section has the best small schools over the decades. And now we've got some of that balance up this way. And for all of the good things that are going on right now, a couple of programs that have a chip on their shoulder, or traditional playoff programs, the Turlock Bulldogs of the 209, the Rock'em Thunder of Placer County, were hit with some sanctions by the CIF governing body, mostly tied to eighth graders going to 7-on-7s. It's not SMU football in 1980 where they're handling, doing all kinds of illegal things, but somebody's getting on these guys, somebody's ratting them out, or they're self-reporting, but they're going to have playoff bans for 1 or 2 seasons. I'm sorry, will not host playoff games the first for at least a year or two. But initially, Jordan, I think the section was ready to say no playoffs, and then they talk about it, and they come to an agreement. We'd never like to see complete playoff bans. It's always a little harsh for kids who had nothing to do with it. I understand that the rules are in place; they're voted on by the member schools. So when the section could, work backwards and go to no. Hosting of playoffs, or maybe a coach sits out an opener, I think that's okay. But what are you hearing out there, Jordan? And I'm sure that everybody feels like they're picked on by the section. Del Oro baseball wonders about that. I've heard schools throughout the Oak Grove Unified, the Folsom Bulldogs feel like they get picked on. Destiny Christian, Grant, everybody. And the section is not trying to. A lot of times people say the CIF, they hate kids. Well, they don't hate kids. It's a little harsh. They want to push to have their rules followed, those kind of things. But anyway, Jordan, that's a long-winded transition to you. What are you hearing out there with Rockland?
That was an interesting case. So basically what happened was a lot of these local teams participate in Sierra College's 7-on-7 camp, which is considered an AAU camp, quote unquote. And I know the football AAU thing is kind of still new, so it's a little bit of the Wild West in terms of the rules with it. But when this camp originally happened in June, eighth graders are not eighth graders. They're incoming freshmen, and a lot of times they can be used. But instead, this time, there were eighth graders being used, and when it's in April, they are still eighth graders. And Rockland used three of them, and my understanding is they had been warned before, or this wasn't their first offense of the situation, which is why the punishment coming down seems so harsh. So I actually, unfortunately, I found out about these sanctions the day that I was visiting Rockland's practice for our previews, about an hour after I got home from Rockland's practice. So poor timing there. I wish I had known about it a little bit beforehand, so I could have gotten a little more of the details. But the original ban was Rockland was not going to be eligible for postseason play this year, which is huge because that's a program that's been to two straight section titles, and they were one, I mean, defensive stand and I think like a long third down conversion and a couple crazy catches from Cheese Shabazz and Zoe Edwards from being a back-to-back section champion. They were going to be restricted to limited designations during a couple periods during the sport calendar, and then a 2-year probation. They appealed it, and the sanctions were altered. So now they are not eligible to host a postseason game for the next 2 years. So that's this year or next year, no matter what their seed is. And Rockland's a team that looks like they could be a 1 or a 2 seed again this year if some of the holes get plugged up right. So I mean, that's huge. We could be seeing a 1 seed going to visit, 8 or a 9 seed in the first round, or the second round. They're also restricted to a couple limited designations still. They're on probation for the next 5 years as a program. They have to submit a corrective action plan, which includes a 1-game suspension for head coach Jason Adams to start the season in that game against Turlock. And then no AAU workouts involving incoming eighth graders for 1 calendar year. So that basically means no eighth graders at the Sierra camp this year. It's worth noting a couple other programs did get dinged for this eighth grade situation. Colfax and Placer both had the same thing happen where they're working on an incoming eighth grader. It was their program's first offense. I believe I was told both self-reported, and it was an extended dead period for both of them. And Chris and I know we were kind of talking to a few coaches on it. It sounds like the wording of the rules around the AAU stuff is kind of murky, but at the same time, with Rockland's case, it was their second offense. I mean, I know some people say it seems harsh, especially with the jump from, extended dead period to this being first and second offense. But Joe, as you've said, the section does have the member schools agree on these rules and they do enforce them. Usually when you see a program get some harsh sanctions, it's not their first offense, as we've seen in the past. But that is a big thing because Rockland potentially losing that home field advantage in the playoffs can be huge because that's a difference of making a school like an Enox or whoever is in that Division II bracket. That's a difference of them driving 90 minutes or 2 hours to come to you versus vice versa. You have to now go to them.
It's a great point, Jordan, and and it is a good thing that these aren't playoff bans. And yeah, it looks harmless if it's an incoming freshman or something, but somewhere in the paperwork it's there. You can't do it. This section has dropped the hammer hard before in 2007 or 8. I was on some of the coverage for Pete Saka was the Sac-Joaquin Section commissioner there, and he dropped the hammer on Franklin of Stockton, and they had this inordinate amount of transfers from America Samoa, those islands way out in the Pacific. And I can't remember the guy's name who was bringing him in, and his intent was noble. He's trying to help kids, but you can't do it that way. You can't have them housed and this and that. And so that initially they were going to shut down the whole program, or just no, you could have a team, but no playoffs for 4 or 5 years. That got lightened up, with discussion. And I'm not so sure that Franklin ever really recovered from that. But those were egregious things. These are not. But everybody's on a watch list. And I remember there was a school from the Oak Grove Unified some 15 years ago, and they got warned for hitting a blocking sled in the off season, and the defense was, well, our guys need a lot of work. Well, you can't do it in the dead period type of thing. So those kind of things, and some of it we can laugh at. But why don't we bounce it around a little bit here and talk about some of the best players? And we kind of mentioned a few guys. Jordan mentioned some tight ends, and Chris talked about some of the small school players. But if we go at a short list, I'll go first. I'll go with 3 or 4 guys, and let's just bounce around. These guys are worth watching. They are good kids, they're good students, they're good leaders, and they are fantastic athletes with all kinds of scholarships. Ryder Lyons, five-star quarterback. I did a story on the Folsom Star a couple of earlier this summer. It wasn't necessarily on him, but I already listed him as one of our all-time great quarterbacks, all levels considered, high school, college, beyond. He hasn't played in college, but he's been so good in high school that he's kind of on his way. Other guys on that list included Randy Fasani of the mid 1990s from Del Oro, and Troy Taylor of 1985 Cordova Lancers fame, things like that. Jamison Powell, he's been mentioned. He's a star receiver. They've got linemen all over the place. They think their JV team is going to be the best that they've ever had. So I'm going to start with Ryder Lines there. Grant Pacers, we mentioned Kobe Shabazz, a great receiver, also plays defense, and Zoe Edwards, 6'6", 200, maybe 190 pounds. He's listed as a tight end. He's a receiver. This guy's not blocking anybody. He's going to run circles around people and catch the ball. So there we go there, and there's linemen all over the place. But Jordan, drop a few names here, and all of these guys are going to play major college football. Some of them may play in the NFL. They are the fortunate few. Some of these guys will be going head to head in that ESPN opener on Saturday, the 23rd, Grant versus Folsom. But Jordan, who's some other guys of note that we ought to keep a mental eye on?
My coverage range, there's a few guys I think are must watch. Over at Rockland, you got Reeve Sloan, who I mean, could cement himself as the best or second best quarterback in this section. I think, it's certainly the second best in the SFL. Nevada commit, probably a little bit under recruited for what he is. Both or all of his brothers, I think, have gone on to play D1 somewhere. Great kid, great leader there. Dom Coelho over at Rockland too, San Diego State commit. He only had 28 tackles last year, 8 tackles for loss. And I think 11 of his 28 came in the postseason, so he kind of picked it up more at the end. But he just didn't get a ton of playing time because of how stacked Rockland's D line was last year, and he's already committed to San Diego State with that limited action. So that goes to show, I mean, the sky's the limit for him. I love a good two-way player, and it's hard to not find this duo in the FVL, but Chase Walidko over at 12 Bridges, I believe he led the section in tackling last year. We know about him as a linebacker. I think he might be even scarier as a running back. He just runs mean and runs angry. And he's going to be a hard guy to bring down. 12 Bridges already a stacked team, defending Division II NorCal champs, look like the favorites in D4 again. But he's a kid that if you want to put the ball in his hands to close out a game, he's going to be a tough kid to bring down, especially that fourth quarter when the defense is worn out. Another kid that fits that profile too, Sean Jones over at Placer, racked up over 1,800 yards and 32 touchdowns in his first two varsity seasons. He looks back stronger than ever. I love that mindset. Running behind Gage Esty, the son of an NFL player, the latest Esty to come through Placer. And Chris, I know we talked about it with Casarobel, but that's another program too that somehow they lost so much, but they look like they might be even better than last year. And I mean, those are a couple guys I've really got my eye on right now. And just a lot of guys in that program, maybe a couple small school ones too. Josiah Rubidell up at Colfax, Jaden Brock over at Bear River, second year for him starting. He started at quarterback as a sophomore. And then how about out in Lincoln? We've got the other Gaylor, Brock Gaylor, Luke's cousin, I believe it is, a former bull rider. He can play linebacker, running back. He's played some quarterback, some tight end. I mean, I think at this point, probably a kicker or punter too. I wouldn't be shocked. And Mason Volzer too, another kid out there, is a star guard for them. Probably their best player on their basketball team as a freshman last year. He's getting reps at quarterback, getting reps at receiver, whatever it is. And I asked Coach Alan Berg about him, and he said, the dilemma with him is he's so good that do you want to make him your starting quarterback or do you want to make him something else because you don't want to, potentially not have him lining up outside as one of your best athletes on the team. So some big school guys, some small school guys to watch, and it's going to be a really talented group this year.
Jackson, drop some names, sir.
I could list a lot from Folsom and Grant, but I won't. You can see in the story, Folsom has 18 guys with Division I offers. Grant has 14 in their program. I'm sure both will have more in the coming weeks and months, but I'll kind of go other places in the section for this. St. Mary's of Stockton, Kenneth Moore, a 3-4-star receiver, whatever. It depends on which site you look at. A UCLA commit. Had 840 receiving yards last year, 541 rushing yards on 9.8 yards per carry, over 450 return yards, whether that's punt, kick. Isaiah Eni at Granite Bay, a two-way star. He is going to be a 4-year varsity guy, a Sacramento State commit. He had 88 tackles last year, 21 rushing touchdowns. Him and Darnell Turner, who's another Sacramento State commit, that is a duo that you do not want to miss on the field. Strong, electric. They can take the top off of you every which way. And another guy that can, Wes Burford at Oakdale. They play Sonora week 1 on the 22nd. He is a guy that he was our West Coast Prep Sacramento Men's Athlete of the Year for all sports, a state qualifier in multiple sports. Last year alone, almost 2,700 rushing yards, 19th most nationally, 92 tackles defensively, an Air Force commit in football. He's a star wrestler, Star Trek, everything else. And Troy Bowens at Sutter, the defensive end who I mentioned earlier, he just got a Stanford offer as well, a consensus 4-star, top 200 guy in his class. And as humble as it gets, we mentioned in podcasts, I think in the spring when I was there for a spring practice out, there had been other places trying to reach out to him, trying to get him there, and he is Sutter through and through. He ain't leaving. He laughs about it when he sees these texts from whoever it is of, hey, come here, come here, come here. He just laughs, shows his coaches. He's like, I'm not leaving Sutter. Sutter is my home. Sutter's where I always wanted to go. And probably one of the nicest and most humble kids you'll meet at any level. That you wouldn't even you look at him, you think he's a 4 or 5 star. You talk to him, you'd think that this kid's just the nicest person on earth. So that's another guy right there. Some small schools, big schools, everywhere in the section. It goes to show you how stacked the Sac-Joaquin section is. And Joe, I know I texted you. I need the answer now because you saw Folsom on Friday. We were both there at that Folsom Sarah game last year when Sarah shocked Folsom, right? Considering what Sarah lost, they had that last minute field goal, right? That game winning drive. Folsom throws that Hail Mary. I thought Tubo got that for a second when that happened, but Folsom hasn't beat Sarah in this home and home series this decade. You were at Folsom scrimmage on Friday. Is this Folsom's time? Can they finally knock off Sarah and make that open division run?
Well, they have to. Should have done it last year. I covered that game last season. They were so frustrated, the Bulldogs. You were there too, Chris, and they talked about we got a lot of growing up to do. And they grew up and went to a NorCal final and lost in a heated, tough battle to the Pittsburgh Pirates of the East Bay. And so they got an army of guys back with the quarterback and the line play and not a ton of defensive starters back, but a lot of dudes in the trenches. So they have to win that game. It's Sarah's opener, and Folsom will have already played the previous week on ESPN against Grant. So you know the Sarah coaches, Patrick Walsh and that crew, they're going to be there checking it out. So um, let me just put it this way. There isn't a team in Northern California, De La Salle, Sarah, Folsom, Grant, that could hang with Modern Day, the national #1 team with I don't know how many Division I guys, but it's an Army or even Bosco. And so that gap is so enormous. And remember, for decades, the gap was De La Salle and everybody else. And De La Salle and the gap with Northern California is not nearly as wide as it used to be. Folsom's beaten them in the past, beaten them in the playoffs, though they still get to more state championships than anybody. So to answer your question, yeah, I think so. And you know they're going to go after Ryder Lyons. I remember Ryder Lyons got rocked in his second varsity game 2 years ago. He was at Sarah. He got blown up on a play and he was out. And he gets up and he goes to the sideline, he lays down, and I'm thinking, this guy may be out. He comes back and has a good half. They lose the game. But right away, you could see this kid was a different kind of toughness. And Patrick Walsh is a big time coach and has been in the open division, the elite big boy game several times. And and this is a topic that we could touch on now or any other time, but we could drop a hint of it. It's going to have to come a time when the CIF doesn't allow Modern Day of Orange County, the big juggernaut, the national #1 football team the last several years, to be playing against California teams. And I'm not saying that there are California teams who don't want to play them, but it's just a different animal. We talk about transfers up here, and sometimes people go in a panic, and we get a trickle of transfers. Down there, it's just an avalanche of bodies, and maybe those schools should be playing IMG Academy and Bishop Gorman and teams from Florida and Nevada. I'm not sure, but anybody in this area anybody in this section talking about being worthy of the open division is talking too soon. And just strap it up and go to work. I think Folsom's going to have a hard time even going 10-0 this season. And that's because they have a brutal schedule. Open with Grant, play Mission Viejo, which is state ranked higher, and they're of Southern California. Great scheduling, so we'll find out in Grant how good can Grant do early. Grant may lose 3 games early. Grant, the Pacers of Del Paso Heights, they play Folsom in the opener. They have De La Salle. They have Clovis East of the best team in the Fresno Central section area. Lincoln of San Diego, defending state champion. Those are monster programs. And um, Cardinal Newman of Santa Rosa. They're not going to win them all. And they're gearing their schedule to grant Pacers that way because they're going to be overwhelming probably again in the Metro League. So either way, we got big boy ball, and we talk about these small schools and teams like Sutter and Bear River or Colfax. They still play on grass. They want to play on grass. And Jordan, you've been around the Colfax scene. They've been so good for so long, small enrollment, just like Bear River. But those teams, Bear River with a new coach, Colfax with a newer coach who's been around a long time, those two teams still are proof that you could survive with declining enrollment. And people aren't leaving the regions or not going to school there because it's not a good region or a good school. It's just there's not any growth up there. But what do you see from those small schools up there, Jordan?
I mean, one, I think we have to say, if I had to rank all the high school football rivalries out here, the River Bowl between Bear River and Colfax might be a top three one for me. Joe, I'm sure you've covered it. Chris, if you haven't covered it yet, that is one where the old adage of throw the records out the window. It doesn't matter if one of them's 9-0 or 0-9. That game's going to be a 3-point game with a goal line stand to win it somehow. It just always is with those two schools. A lot of pride between those programs. But yeah, I think both of those teams are going to be they're going to be competitive in the PVL. I mean, even last year, Colfax's team, they missed the playoffs. They went 4-6. That team was absolutely decimated by injuries. And if you want to know how good that team was still, they missed the postseason. They took a league champion Wheatland to overtime. They won a couple games and were right there in them that, were kind of the difference maker. I think they had 7 games decided by one possession last season. And I want to say they were something like 1-6 in those games. It was just kind of how the cards fell. They took Lincoln down to the wire too. So that was a team that was probably a little better than that record showed last year, with head coach Jason Stowers. I played for him at Del Oro. He was our special teams coordinator then. And I've said for a while, Chris, you've heard me use this. I think he could motivate a group of kindergartners to go 5-5 on the field. It doesn't matter what he has. He just has a way of making you want to run through a brick wall for him. They're actually debuting a new turf field at Colfax this year. They're probably going to have to be on the road, Del Oro, for their first 2 home games because it's not quite ready yet. That's a whole nother ordeal. But yeah, they'll be debuting it. I believe it's going to be called Robert Marson Field at Tony Martello Stadium, or it might be vice versa, Tony Martello Field at Marson Stadium. Either way, alluding to 2 of the greats there in that program. And then Bear River, a program that's had I think like 35 winning seasons in 38 years as a school or something like that. New coach Jeremy Kerr is there, but Kerr has been around the program. He coached a lot of these kids at JV a few years ago, took a little time away from coaching, but one of the big things, he retained almost his entire coaching staff from last season, or the entire coaching staff from last season pretty much. A lot of the guys under him, so no new coordinators, a couple, maybe 1 or 2 new position coaches in. And I love what they're doing at that program too. They're running everything with the JV and varsity pretty much together. So it's all continuity. A lot of the practices are involved in the junior program. And I think that's what's huge with building that continuity, is having a good relationship with those feeder programs as well. And talking to them, that's a group that graduated a lot last year, but they certainly feel like they're going to be in the mix in the PVL. And I think we kind of just feel like that with the PVL. I mean, Wheatland and Lincoln kind of look like the 2 favorites in that league, but I think we've all touched on it. A lot of those games in that league last year, it didn't matter who was kind of in the mix, what anyone's record was. A lot of them were 1-score games or a lot of upsets. Felt like a league that you kind of just knew the champion was going to have 1 or 2 losses in somehow. And it kind of gives me that feeling again this year, where the gap between the best team in that league and the worst team in that league is really not that big. And again, I wouldn't be shocked to see a 1 or 2 loss league champion there. And Colfax and Bear River are certainly 2 teams that feel like they should be in the mix and be back to the programs they were. I mean, they were fighting for state titles every other year. I think they played each other in a few section titles. And 2 programs that whenever they come together, it's fun to watch.
It's the best in small school football. I mean, we could go on all day. That's just a sample. What we're going to be talking about every week on the Three Stooges podcast. This will be linked and on Chris Jackson's West Coast Preps. We have coverage every day. Give us all a follow at the Sacramento Bee, West Coast Preps, and Gold Country Media. We appreciate football. We appreciate the fans. Next week we'll dig into more on what's going on and maybe wheel out some top teams and maybe some surprise teams, all those kind of things. Chris Jackson, if there's a way for people to reach out to us if they have a question about sanctions or fairness or scheduling or teams moving up or whatever, we'll take on any topic. The haves and have-nots, the good programs, why this team doesn't play that team. We're an open book. So how can people get a hold of us?
So send us an email, stoogespodcast@gmail.com. You have a question, a comment, whatever it is, be happy to read it and answer and discuss it further on this podcast. But that is the email, and we'll check that on a daily basis for all of our podcasts.
And keep it clean and civil. For me, the other two guys, you could roast them. But I'm Joe Davidson, Chris Jackson, Jordan Georgeson. It's a thrill doing this. We will see people out there one way in person or on social media. Reach out to us. Let us know if you like our content. If you want something more, what else are you looking for? What you're curious. We're here to talk to the people. It's fun to do it, guys. We'll see you guys real soon.